The Retirement Café Podcast, episode 74, Finding Purpose in Charitable Work.
Retired or thinking about retirement? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Retirement Café Podcast. In each episode, we bring you an important conversation with insight, tips and knowledge, all designed to help you live a fulfilling and successful life in retirement. Here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner and Accredited Later Life Advisor, Justin King.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Retirement Café Podcast, which is brought to you by the Timeline app. Timeline is retirement income planning software that helps financial planners like me bring your retirement journey to life and answer your big retirement income questions. Before we launch into this week's episode, I wanted to let you know that we are holding virtual Retirement Café events every Friday morning for the next few weeks. We recognize that with a great deal of uncertainty concerning COVID-19, you are bound to have many unanswered questions concerning your finances, your retirement, and life in general. Whilst we can't meet face-to-face, we can meet in the virtual world using the easy-to-use Zoom video conferencing facility at 11 o'clock each Friday morning. So why not grab yourself a coffee, pull up a chair to connect with like-minded people and get your questions answered. Please visit our website, retirementcafe.co.uk, for more information, and I hope to see you on Friday. Now, on to this week's episode. Today, I would love to share with you an interview with one of our clients, Mark Anness, who joined me to chat about how he spends his time since retiring 3 years ago. We've discussed the importance of finding purpose in retirement on a number of podcast episodes, and Mark seems to have done just that. He's become heavily involved in a charity dear to his heart, and it was clear from our conversation that he gets a huge amount of satisfaction from the work that he does. Here's my conversation with Mark. So I'm really pleased to be joined by one of my clients today, Mark. Hello, Mark.
Hello.
Nice to see you. Thanks for coming in to have a chat.
Good to be here.
To the Retirement Café.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much.
I know you're a listener to the podcast, and so it's really wonderful to have you as a guest.
Yes, no, it's good to be here.
So Mark, you've got a really interesting story, haven't you, about what you're up to in retirement. So for the listeners, how long have you been retired for a start?
I've been retired 3 years. I retired very early.
Right.
I was 63. But yes, I've been retired for 3 years now.
Wow. And what did you do before retirement?
I'd spent 30 years writing program code for computers. I spent 3 years before that as a teacher and 3 years as a stamp dealer. But for 30 years, I was writing program code and thoroughly enjoyed it, except for the last 3 years.
Right.
So I decided I'd take early retirement and
Excellent.
Get on with something else.
Now, you've been, all my clients' stories are fantastic, but you've got a very specific story about what you're up to in retirement and how you're keeping yourself occupied. So tell me a little bit about that.
I'm now a trustee for a charity which was started locally by a friend of mine called Myra's Wells. And it was about 2 years, I think, before I did retire that he asked me if I'd be a trustee. And I said yes, I would. I thought it would be something which would keep me busy in retirement, and it certainly is. But it's what I feel to be an extremely worthwhile charity, working in Africa, working with people who've got no clean water, and trying to provide them with clean water.
Wow. So, well, I mean, we're down in Mudderford, near Bournemouth. How on earth did you get involved in a charity which is doing something out in Africa?
It depends whether you want the 20-minute version or the 2-minute version. But I've got this friend, Eddie Martin, and Eddie and I worked together for many years. Until he was made redundant at the company and then worked on cross-country trains.
Okay.
And his wife was Myra, and she was a teacher at Old Holt School up the road from here. And one morning she was travelling to work, and similar to the podcast today, actually, there was a road accident, and she was killed outright. It turned out that the driver coming the other way on the wrong side of the road was actually one of her former pupils.
Oh, gosh.
And it was a bit of a long story, but essentially he'd had contact with some people out in Burkina Faso. which for anyone who doesn't believe it exists, it does exist. It's just above Ghana, just above the Ivory Coast.
Okay, so West Africa.
Mali, in West Africa, landlocked country. And as a sort of result of all the contact in the past, there was a lady out there called Christine, who is Burkinabe. She's not English, but she's got an English name, who asked Eddie if he would like to go and see her and her husband and spend some time out there.
Now, the connection where she'd actually been in Bournemouth for a little while, learning English, hadn't she?
She had indeed, yes. In about 1996, she was here for 18 months.
And she stayed, I think, with Eddie and
Myra.
And Myra.
Yes, for certainly part of the time. And
so that was where the connection was formed.
Absolutely,
right.
Absolutely. And that was really all through the church connections, which we have. So Eddie went out to Ouagadougou. And if you watch Pointless, Ouagadougou is always pointless answer, and so is Burkina Faso actually as well. So Eddie spent a little while out there, 2 or 3 weeks I think, and during that time, Christine and her husband Michel took him to see a school which was on the outskirts of Ouagadougou. It's a school they'd started. Michel is actually a teacher in the school in Ouagadougou.
Right.
And they'd started this little school on the outskirts of Ouagadougou in a little place called Zongo. And there was 3 classrooms there, each with about 60, 70 children in, but there was no water there. And so Eddie said to Christine, how much would it cost to put a well here? And she said at that time it was about £4,000. Eddie came home and said to friends and family, why don't we put a well there? And in the due course of time, I suppose it was October 2006, not only had he got £4,000, he got £8,000.
Wow.
And so there was a well at Zongo and another well as well at a different place, Arbelay. And so there were 2 wells, and Eddie thought that's fine.
And this was really also in memory of his.
It was in memory of his wife, and in fact, at Zongo School, there's a plaque which says Myra's Well.
Wow.
In fact, at the other place as well, Arbelay, and Eddie thought nothing more of it. That was it. He'd provided a well at Zongo, and that was as far as he was concerned what he'd done. But people started giving him money, carried on giving him money as well. And a little while later, he had enough to do another well, and then a 4th well. And by 2011, there were 11 wells.
So, Mark, let's take a step back a second. I mean, if someone said to me, can you put a well into a West African country?
Yes, indeed. Yes.
I wouldn't have a clue where to start.
No, that's right.
So, how do you go about putting a well into
everything fell into place, and we're Christians. We see God's hand in this. Christine was working for a company called a charity called Plan International,
right,
in Ouagadougou, and part of her job was to make arrangements for Plan's work. Essentially, is enabling other charities to be able to carry out their jobs. And part of her remit was to make arrangements for wells to be drilled.
Okay.
So she had contact with the drilling contractors, the surveyors, the building contractors, because around a well you put a wall to stop the cattle getting into where the water is, keep it clean. So she had all the necessary contacts. So apart from doing the job at Plan International, in the evenings she'd make arrangements for Eddie to have his wells drilled. And by 2011 there were 11 wells.
Wow.
And at that time Eddie had a good friend who had his own family charity, and so the money was being channeled through that.
Right.
But in 2011 he said, this looks as if it's here to stay for a little bit. We better get a charity registered. So the obvious choice of name was Myra's Wells.
Yeah.
And that was established in 2011, in August 2011, with really just the family as trustees. So by that time, Eddie had remarried. His wife is now Karen, and 2 of Eddie's children and 1 of Karen's were trustees. But really things started to move a bit more quickly at that stage.
Yeah.
And I think in 2012 there were about 12 wells drilled. And so he began to think, well, perhaps we ought to expand the trustee base a little bit, because there's a difference between a charity which is handling 11 wells over 6 or 7 years and a charity that's handling 12 wells a year. So that's when he started to...
12 wells a year is quite phenomenal. Where does the money come from?
It's absolutely amazing. A lot of it comes from church groups. A lot of it comes from individuals, again, really through the church connections. And we have, I think it's around about 60, it may be more like 65 wells now, which have got plaques on because they have been donated, usually in memory of somebody. It might be a father or a mother or something, or a husband or a wife. They just feel it's a nice thing to be able to do, to say, let's provide a well, and we'll put a plaque on it to say...
Now, you've been out to Burkina Faso a number of times, haven't you?
I've been twice.
Twice?
Yes.
Wow. So you're actually seeing these wells being drilled, being put into place?
I've never had the privilege of seeing a well drilled.
Ah, okay.
I've seen plenty of videos of it.
Yeah.
Eddie has been able to see them, but it isn't always possible to make the arrangements at the time that we're out there. This year I went out for a week in January. Eddie was out there for 2 weeks. In other years he's been out for 3-4 weeks on the trot. And during that time it's possible to get the arrangements so that you can actually see it. I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it.
And tell me about the difference that you see in the places that wells have been put in.
The biggest differences are that people have got clean water. And it means that instead of having to walk miles and miles to find water, they've got it there more or less on their doorsteps. And clean water is the difference between getting diarrhea and sickness every other week and not getting diarrhea and sickness every week. It also means that you can actually wash your clothes and have them come out cleaner than when they went into the water. It means that the livestock have got clean water to drink, which means that they're far more healthy. And you can see the difference in the livestock particularly, because they look very mangy, quite honestly. But when they start to get cleaner water, their health improves so much.
Sure.
And a lot of the people in the villages really rely on the livestock, not only for themselves, but also for income, because I went to see a village 2 years ago, a place called Deborah, and the village itself is about 20 kilometres north of a town called Ziniari. They have to take the livestock down to Ziniari to sell it in the market there, but they need to have really healthy cattle to be able to do that. Sure. They've got to walk it down there. They haven't got lorries or anything. And to have the clean water just means that the livestock is so much more healthy for them. It means that they're able to wash themselves, because we've been to places where children have never washed. And you can see their skin is just caked with dust and with mud. And it's just such a huge difference. It means as well that the children, because it's always the women and the children going for the water, it's never the men.
Right.
In fact, we went to a village this time, and we got there, and it was quite late. It was about 5:30 in the evening, and of course the light goes by 6:15, and it was market day. And the ladies hadn't been able to go to the well because they'd been up to the market. Well, the men were all standing there.
Right.
But there was no thought that they might get water and take it back home. Right. It's the ladies' job. Okay. And it's the ladies and the children that do that. And if the children are having to spend hours waiting at wells 4 miles away, or going to rivers or going to ponds and getting water, they can't go to schools.
Sure.
And so it means that they're then able to have more chance of education, provided there's a school for them to go to, of course.
Yeah.
But it also means that the health problems are a lot less, in the sense that very often the nearest clinic is going to be 10 kilometres away.
Wow.
So just having clean water available
Yeah.
in the village, it makes just such a huge difference.
It's something we all take for granted every time we open the tap and brush our teeth, don't we? And,
I counted at our house, and in amongst the tap outside, and we've got an annex, granny annex, so counting those taps as well, we've got 14 taps in our house.
Yeah.
And even when we put a well there, people are still going to have to walk a kilometre to get there from their doorstep and take the water back home afterwards.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a couple of places where we've put taps because if you've got a good water supply when you drill, then you're able to put a water tower up, and so you can have a tap. And there's one place where it was near a school, a Christian school up in the northeast, and we were able to put a water tower there and provide 3 taps. One was in the village, which is half a kilometre one way, and then 2 at the school, one for the staff and one for the pupils. I think people out in that district think it's magic that they've got water in a tap. It's
amazing.
It's just something which is almost inconceivable.
Now,
really.
one of the things that I know you touched on when we've talked about this before, but one of the things I find really fascinating about the charity is that all the money raised is going to these wells. Tell me more about that.
It's actually written into the trust deed. Anything which is donated goes towards the drilling of wells. That will cover the survey, the drilling itself, the pump and the installation, the surrounding wall, and it also covers very minimal expenses if the contacts in Ouagadougou have to go out to help out. All other expenses, which includes any administration costs, any publicity type costs, travel costs, even travel out to Burkina, we fund ourselves.
Amazing.
In fact, what happens in reality is that the charity pays it and then we refund it to the charity because that way we can get gift aid back on it. But we feel that's absolutely right. If we look at some of the other charities and see what's going on in admin, we feel that if we're given money, people are giving us money to do the job that we want to do.
Yeah.
And so we feel that's extremely important that we work that way.
And so how much of your time, your retired time, is now spent in being a trustee?
It's almost full time. It's not quite full time. But this last fortnight, for instance, having come back from Burkina, I think it was the 18th I got back of January. I've spent almost a fortnight writing a diary along with Eddie, and that's now just about ready for publication, I think. And the next thing on the agenda is that we really need a new brochure, which we're in the process of getting ready. And it is almost a full-time job. I've done the accounts until now, but I've now got another friend helping us with that. But just the administration of keeping track of what wells are being drilled, what stage they've got to, and keeping the records of where the money's been spent, getting the invoices and receipts from Burkina, which is another story, and just making sure that everything is kept reasonably tidy. Is getting on for a full-time job.
I'm sure you're absolutely the man for the job, so and it must be quite fulfilling.
It's extremely fulfilling. And it's so fulfilling when you get there and you see the result of it.
Yeah.
I think the first time I saw a well in the flesh, so to speak, it was really quite an emotional moment. That was at a school. It was a place just there. There's a bigger town called Ouagadougou, and it was a little village the other side called Toucan, and that was a well actually, which was drilled in memory of somebody as well. So it was
Now, when we last chatted, you told me about you were driving past a river and you saw 2 young boys.
Yes.
Tell me more about that story. Tell the listeners about that story.
This was I didn't go last year to Burkina, but Eddie and some of the other trustees did. And they went to a place down in the southwest. There's a town there called Gower, which isn't spelt Gower,
right.
Which would make sense. It's Gaoua.
Okay.
And it's really it's not quite the last town you get to in Burkina Faso before you go into Ivory Coast. There's another one a bit further down called Bati. But we spent 2 nights down there this year, but the previous year, the trustees had been down there and had been shown a village called Ouadaradu. And in Ouadaradu, there was a well next to a little school there, but the well was locked. And you find this, particularly if it's a well of the school, it will be locked because the water is only for the pupils or the staff.
Right.
And so the rest of the village weren't able to use it. And as a result of that, they had to go down to a river, which was about a mile away, and get water from the river. Mm. And the rivers are full round about September because it rains from June to September.
Right.
And then they slowly go down. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's a full river or an empty river. It's a river and it's dirty.
Yeah.
We've seen so many pictures of rivers where the cows are in the river, the people are in the river, and it's just horrible to think really what's in the river. And there were 2 little boys, and this was in January, and by this time the river had almost dried up. There was just this last little bit of it left. And they were standing in the river with their buckets. And we got a photograph of one of the little boys as he put the bucket to his mouth and started to drink the water. And it was a pretty instant decision that we were going to put a well there. So we came home, or they came home, and we sent the money across to Christine, and eventually she was able to get the well drilled. We wanted it to be the first one in October when we restarted drilling after the rainy season. But unfortunately, it was so wet there that it couldn't be done. And we had to wait until the last day of November before it was dry enough to get the drills out into the village. You can drill when it's raining, but you can't get the drills there because the roads are just so dreadful. And the first 2 boreholes were dry boreholes down at 90 metres. Wow. And we... So, again, we're a Christian charity. We sent an email out to all our supporters saying, please pray about it. And then we sent another surveyor along who is actually a very qualified man, lives in Bobo, which is the second city in Burkina. And he went down and did a survey. And he said, keep going. And it got down past the 100-metre mark and then 130 metres. Gosh. And it's 134 metres we found water there. And that was a real joy to us. And so we really wanted to go back this year to Ouadaradu and see this well, which we did. We spent 2 nights down in Gower, and after the first night we went up to Ouadaradu. The road was dreadful. It was a bit deceptive. We went out of the town and it was a tarmac road, and I thought this is going to be nice, we went across a little bridge and it became a dirt road, and that's the main road down to Ivory Coast. Right. Just a dirt road. We turned off that a little way down and went about 8 miles across a shocking track. It really was dreadful. There was a sign halfway along saying humps. We'd already been bumped up and down for about 4 miles at that stage. And we got to the village and said, wouldn't it be nice if we could find those 2 boys? So we stopped outside the pastor's house, and there were a few boys sitting on the bench there, and we got the photo out and said, do you know this boy? And one of them said, it's me. Wow. So he got on his bike, went and found the other boy and brought them both back. And we've now got lovely photographs of them drinking clean water out of the well. And the interesting thing is that actually they said they've got to go further now than they had to before to get the water because they live quite near the river. Right. But they said it's worth it. Sure. Because the water is clean. Amazing. And we had a lovely time there. We had what we call a well blessing service there. We didn't really want to leave there, but we had to go on to another well afterwards.
So what's the future for Myra's Wells then?
Well, the last 3 years, we've been able to drill, I think 3 years ago it was 30 wells. Last year it was 34. This year I think it's going to be about 25.
Amazing.
And we just say, as God provides money, we drill wells.
Brilliant.
And we haven't got targets.
No.
I suppose we have in a sense, because the government figures indicate there's about 7,000 wells needed in Burkina.
Gosh.
But we just provide wells as we can, and
Brilliant.
We'll keep going while we can do.
So where do people find out more about Myra's Wells?
It's myraswells.org, the website. We've got a Twitter account, which I confess we don't do as much as we should do on, but that's Myra's Wells, at Myra's Wells. There's an Instagram account, which is at Myra's Wells at Myra's_Wells.
Right.
And there is a Facebook page if you search for Myra's Wells on Facebook.
And I know there's quite a lot of videos and information about where the wells are going and the people that you're helping.
Yes, indeed. And on YouTube we've got a channel as well, which has got a few videos on it. And
this diary that you're writing, when's people going to be able to read that?
That is, I think it's going to be available probably either late this week or early next week.
Fantastic.
Yes.
So we'll put all all of that information in our show notes on the Retirement Cafe website page.
Yes.
But it's been fascinating talking to you, and what a great demonstration of a fulfilling retirement you are.
It is. The one fly in the ointment is the security situation out there, which has deteriorated a lot over the last 3 years. 3-4 years ago, Burkina really was a very peaceful place. But the western and northern border is with Mali, and the eastern border is with Niger. And over the last 3 years, the problems with the extremists has spilled over from Mali into the northern part of Burkina, to the extent that actually now the whole of Burkina on the FCO website is coloured red. When we went in January, it was largely red around the outside, and then there was a little bit in the middle, which was yellow, which is where we went. But now the whole of it is red, and it's not a good situation. No. In fact, only this morning I had a Google alert, which said there'd been another attack on a church up there with 24 people killed.
Oh, gosh.
And since we've come home, I think it's over 100 people have been killed in terrorist attacks up in the north. It's mainly in the north and in the east, but it's getting a lot more dangerous, a lot more difficult.
It's very distressing for you.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So we'll keep going. We'll keep providing water.
That's brilliant. I think it's brilliant the work that you're doing, and it's an amazing charity. And I love how you've changed from coding to being a trustee and doing something really hugely worthwhile.
Yes,
I'm not saying your coding wasn't either, but
I felt at the end it was getting less worthwhile.
Well, it's fantastic. You found a new passion, a new purpose, and and it's a great demonstration to all of us. So thank you for joining me this morning.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for the time, and thank you for your help with the money as well.
Absolutely, that's what we do. Great to chat to you. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks again to Mark for sharing his inspiring story. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please leave a review on iTunes to help more people like you to discover us. To find out more about Myra's Wells and the work they are doing, you can check out the show notes on our website at theretirementcafe.co.uk, where you'll find some useful links as well as information about the virtual Retirement Cafe coffee mornings. So until next time, stay safe and stay well. This is Justin King, helping you feel more informed in your retirement.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Café Podcast with Justin King. To find out more, you can find us online at theretirementcafe.co.uk.